Jesus saved a man with many demons. Chapter 5. Then they came to the other side of the sea, into the region of Gerasene. And when he got out of the boat, immediately a man from the tomb with an unclean spirit met him, who had his dwelling among the tomb, and no one was able to bind him any more, even with a chain, because he has often been bound with shackles and chains, and the chain has been torn apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. And constantly, night and day, among the tombs and in the mountains, he was screaming, gashing himself with stone. And seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What do I have to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God, do not torment me." For he has been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." And he was asking him, "What is your name?" And he said to him, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he began pleading with him earnestly not to send them out of the region. Now there was a large herd of swine feeding nearby on a mountain. And the demon pleaded with him, saying, "Send us into the swine, so that we may enter them." And Jesus gave them permission. It came out. The unclean spirit entered the swine, and the herds rushed down the steep bank into the sea, about 2,000 of them, and they were drowned in the sea. And their herdsmen ran away, reported in the city and in the countryside, and the people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and observed the demon possessed man sitting down, clothed in his right mind, the very man who had the legion. And they became frightened. And those who have seen it recounted to them how this had happened to the demon possessed man, and about the swine. And they began to plead with him to leave their region. And as he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon possessed was pleading with him that he might accompany him, and he did not let him. But he said to him, "Go home to your people and report to them what great things the Lord has done for you, and how he had mercy on you." And he went away and began to preach in the Decapolis what great thing Jesus has done for him. And everyone were marveling. Jesus healed a woman, and Jairus' daughter. And when Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and so he stayed by the seashore. And one of the synagogue officials named Jairus came up, and seeing him, fell at his feet and pleaded with him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at point of death. Please come, and by coming, he may he may lay your hand on her, so that she may be saved and live." And he went off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. And a woman who had a hermitage for 12 years, had endured much a hand of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was not helped at all, but rather had grown worse. After hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd behind him, and touched his garment. For she was saying, if I just touch his garment, I will be saved from this. And immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she knew within her body that she has been healed of her affliction. And immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him has gone forth, turned around in the crowd and was saying, who touched my garment? And his disciples were saying to him, you see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, who touched me? And he was looking around to see the woman who has done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him, told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. While he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official, saying, your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any more? But Jesus, overhearing what has been spoken, said to the synagogue official, do not be afraid, only believe. And he allowed no one to accompany him, except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came to the house of the synagogue official, and he saw a commotion, and people loudly crying and wailing. Entering in, he said to them, why are you making a commotion and crying? The child has not died, but is asleep. And they began laughing at him. But putting them all out, he took along the child's father and mother and his own companion, and into the room where the child was. And taking the child by the hand, he said to her, Tabitha, come, which translate means little girl. I say to you, arise. Immediately the little girl stood up and began to walk, for she was 12 years old. Immediately they were completely astounded, and he gave them strict order that no one should know about this. And he said that some food should be given to her to eat. Jesus reject at Nazareth, chapter 6. Jesus went out from there and came into his hometown, and his disciple followed him. And when the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many listeners were astonished, saying, what did this man get these things, and what is this wisdom given to him? Given to this man, and such miracle as these performed by his hand. Is this man not the carpenter, son of Mary, the brother of James and Josh and Judas and Simon? Are not his sister here with us? And they were taking offense at him. And Jesus was saying to them, a prophet is not without honor, except in his hometown and among his own relatives and his own household. And he could do no miracle there, except that he laid his hand on a few sick people and healed them. And he was marveling at their unbelief. And he was going around the village teaching. The disciples sent out, and he summoned the 12 and began to send them out in pairs. He was giving them authority over the unclean spirit. And he instructed them that they should take nothing for their own journey, except a staff only, no bread, no bag, no money in their belt, but to wear sandals. And he added, do not put on two tunics. And he was saying to them, wherever you enter a house, stay there until you leave town. And any place that does not receive you or listen to you, as you go out from there, shake the dust of the sole of your feet for a testimony against them. And they went out and preached that men should repent. They were casting out many demons and were anointing with oil many sick people and healing them. The death of John the Baptist. And King Herod heard it, for his name has become well known. People were saying, John the Baptist has risen from the dead, and that it is why these miraculous power are at work in him. But others were saying, he is Elijah. Others were saying, he is a prophet, like one of the prophet of old. But when Herod heard it, he kept saying, John, whom I beheaded, has risen. But Herod himself has sent and heard John arrested and bound in prison on account of Herodias, the wife of brother Philip, because he had married her. For John has been saying to Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. Now Herodias was holding a grudge against him and was wanting to put him to death and was not able. For Herod was afraid of John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and he was keeping him safe. And when he heard him, he was very perplexed, but he used to enjoy listening to him. And the strategic day came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his great men and military commander and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter Herodias herself came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. And the king said to the girl, ask me whatever you want, and I will give it to you. And he swore to her, whatever you ask of me, I will give it to you, up to half of my kingdom. She went out and said to her mother, what shall I ask for? And she said, the head of John the Baptist. Immediately she came in a hurry to the king and asked, saying, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And although the king was very sorry, yet because of his oath and because of his dinner guests, he did not want to refuse her. And immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded him to bring back his head. And he went out and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head on a platter, and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. And when his disciples heard this, they came and took away his body, and laid it in the tomb. And the apostles gathered together with Jesus, and they reported to him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, Come away by yourself to a desolate place and rest a while, for there were many people coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Jesus fed 5,000, and the people saw him going, and many recognized him and ran together on foot from all cities and got there ahead of them. And when Jesus went ashore, he saw a large crowd, and he felt compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when it was already quite late, his disciple came to him and began saying, this place is desolated. It is already late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding countryside and village and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered and said to them, you give them something to eat. And they said to him, shall we go and spend 200 denarii on bread, give them something to eat? And he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go look." When they found out, they said, "5 and 2 fish." And he commanded them all to sit down by a group on the green grass. And they sat down in groups of 100 and of 50s. And he took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looking up towards heaven. He blessed the food and broke the loaves, and he kept giving them to the disciples to set before them. And he divided up the 2 fish among them all, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up 12 full baskets of broken pieces, and also of the fish. And there was 5,000 men who ate the loaves. Jesus walked on the water. Immediately Jesus made his disciple get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side to Bethsaida, while he himself was sending the crowd away. And after bidding them farewell, he left for the mountain to pray. And when it was evening, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. And seeing them straining at the oars, for the wind was against them, at their fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea, and he was intending to pass by them. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought that it was a ghost, and cried out. They all saw him, and were terrified. But immediately he spoke with them, and said to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind stopped, and they were utterly amazed. They have not gained any insight about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened.